What's up, motocross action? Welcome to another episode of MXA's First Ride video series. Today we have the 2021 KTM 450 SXF, and every day we're getting closer to MXA's 450 shootout. So this is already our fourth new bike that we've picked up for the season, so things are moving quickly this year. The KTM 450 might look like a bold new graphic bike, but there's actually a lot of structural changes that are different than the 2020 model, so let's dive into the details. Before we jump into the updates that the KTM 450 SXF got for the 2021 model year, let's dive into a few things that KTM is most known for. One, the KTM 450 is the lightest bike in the class, weighing in at 223 pounds on the scales. Two, it's got the ultra strong hydraulic clutch with the Belleville washer. The thing can't be beat. The KTM is also known for its electric start, class leading brakes, and air forks as well that are 3 pounds lighter than traditional coil spring forks. So what did KTM change for the 2021 450 SXF? KTM spent most of their R&D time and money on their suspension and mapping for the 2021 KTM 450 SXF. So what did they do to the exact air forks? They doubled the size of their air bypass, which allows the air to go from the top chamber down to the bottom chamber easier. And this is to reduce the typical harsh feeling that people find when they ride older generation air forks. So this should make it a lot more plush coming into corners. KTM also updated the settings on their WP Exact shock and added a new O-ring for the link piston to reduce fading and improve consistency over long motos. Additionally, with the updates in the shock are the Skf Seals in the linkage. So we tried these seals on the KTM and Husqvarna Rockstar and factory editions, and we really like them. Just playing with them back to back with the stock seals, just feeling them with your hands, it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference because the seals have less stiction. And don't be mistaken, the WP Exact air forks are actually all new for 2021. Now they might not look a lot different on the outside, and even when you dive into the details, they're not huge changes, but they are different. It's not like previous years where they would just change settings and it's like, oh, I could just update my 2020 model with a new setting updates. No, the internals are completely different. So if you want the new forks, you're gonna have to buy a 2021 model or try to order the internals from a WP dealer. As far as mapping goes, map 1 is practically the same as last year from what we understand, while map 2 is a little more aggressive, and it still comes with the same traction control for 1 and 2 as well. For map 2, they really tried to work on the bottom end by picking it up a little bit and making it a little bit more exciting. And KTM is also telling us that map 2 is closer to the American map that we tested with KTM a couple years ago. Now everybody's been begging for this American map. Finally, it seems like we're getting closer, so we're excited to try that out too. Besides the structural differences that the fork and shock got, they also got new settings, updated settings from last year. The tires were changed over from the Dunlop MX3S tires to Dunlop MX33 tires. And to finish off the update list, it got new graphics. So overall, the 2021 KTM 450 SXF doesn't look a lot different on the outside, and even when you dive into the details on the inside underneath the hood, it isn't a lot different, but there are some internal changes that have made this bike different. So I'm super excited to get out here and ride this bike. We also brought our 2021 Husqvarna FC 450, our Yamaha YZ 450, and 21 Kawasaki KX 450 to ride this thing back to back with, see what it's like. The Husqvarna also got big changes. The little brother of the KTM is a lot shorter this year, so we're excited to see if we can feel a difference going back to back with the KTM and Husqvarna. So make sure to stay tuned to the end of this video for our first ride impressions of the 2021 KTM 450 SXF. All right guys, we just got done riding the 2021 KTM 450 SXF. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. Glen Helen was rough today. There's a lot of pros getting ready for the start of the pro motocross season, so the track was gnarly. Overall, after riding the 2021 Husqvarna FC 450 just a couple weeks ago and spending a lot of time on that, I was interested to see if we could notice big differences when jumping on its bigger brother, the KTM. So we made sure to bring that bike as well as our other 2021 models to try back to back with the KTM today, and I was super surprised with the differences between the KTM and the Husqvarna. So if you watched our 2021 Husqvarna FC 450 first ride video, you would know that the bike is a lot shorter for 2021. So the suspension settings are supposed to be the same, or at least very similar to the KTM, and the map settings as well, but the Husqvarna is shorter. They went 10 millimeters shorter in the front, 10 millimeters shorter in the rear, and actually when you do the math, 10 millimeters at the shock, when you equate that to the rear tire, it's actually 30 millimeters shorter, so it's a 3-to-1 ratio, and we were super surprised to hear that. When we originally talked to the WP guys and really dive in deeper with them, and that's when they told us about the 3-to-1 ratio, that it was actually closer to 30 millimeters shorter in the rear. It was actually a big difference riding the Husqvarna and KTM back to back today, and I'm super excited to report that back to you. I always get a lot of questions, what's the difference between KTM and Husky? Well, this year for 2021, suspension is a big difference, and also the height of the bike. After riding the KTM and Husqvarna, I felt like I could throw the Husqvarna into the corners a lot easier, being that the whole mass of the bike was lower, making it easier to throw into corners, while the KTM definitely felt higher up. But the KTM didn't feel bad. It still has the super light feel, and it also, without the restrictor and the muffler that the Husqvarna has, being that the KTM has the same muffler and the same engine without that restrictor, is a little more snappy on the bottom, and I could really appreciate the power of it better. So the KTM overall picked up faster than the Husqvarna coming out of corners and was a lot taller, but it wasn't a bad feel. So diving into the suspension on the KTM, the forks are actually really impressive. Today, Glen Helen wasn't as deep as it has been lately. Lately they've been ripping it really deep, watering it a lot, and we've been getting a lot deeper ruts, more like an East Coast track. Today it was definitely more like a West Coast track, more harder pack, lots of little chop, and some big braking bumps coming into the corners. With that, I really like the plush suspension that the stock settings gave us. I ran the sag at 104 and I put the forks at 10.7 bar, which is what they recommend at stock, and I really liked it. As every year, the factory edition is always a great preview for what's to come in the next model year. The 2021 KTM 450 does feel a lot like the 2020 and a half KTM factory edition, and that's to be expected as a lot of the settings are pretty much the same. Although the 21 KTM 450 feels a lot like the factory edition we rode just 6 months ago, we do like to compare it to the 2020 model and not really talk about the factory edition too much because the factory edition is made for such a small market. When we dive into the details, we like to compare the 2021 to the 2020, and with that being said, big differences. The forks were a lot more plush with the increased air bypass, made it a lot smoother coming into corners. Like I said, I ran the stock settings today, which usually I go up a lot on the forks. I started out at 10.7 bar and I went up to 10.8, 10.9, but I actually like the soft, more plush feeling that the forks gave me with 10.7, 10.8, 10.9 running right in there because the track was so hard packed, slick, and choppy. It was rough today. As for the shock, I didn't have any complaints. After setting the sag, we didn't touch one clicker because we had no complaints in the shock. Diving into mapping, I went back and forth between map 1 and map 2 and also added traction control. For me, being a pro level rider, I don't use traction control all that much because I like the power that map 2 gives me, and I like being able to control it myself and not having the bike control it. However, with the track being so slick today, I did use traction control more than usual. I was also pleased with the updates they made to map 2, the aggressive map for KTM. Map 2 was significantly more aggressive than map 1. As always, I'm really thankful for the map switch on the KTM because it makes it so easy to switch back and forth between map and 2 and also add traction control to each one. So we did that a lot today. Towards the end of the day, while the track was slick, I made sure to go back and forth between the maps. Really didn't feel a difference, and I liked map 1 a lot. It was just smoother, I could give it more throttle, and wasn't as worried about the rear end kicking out or wheeling and going up the hills. As for the lackluster low end that people have complained about before, map 2 felt like it really strengthened that and gave it a little extra boost on the bottom just coming out of corners, so I definitely appreciated the bigger difference that it had this year between map 1 and map 2. Overall, I'm impressed with the new mapping and the new suspension on the KTM 450 SXF. Today the bike felt super light, nimble, and easy to ride, and that's something I'm really appreciating. The weight of the bike And as I grow as a test rider and I continue to ride different models and learn more and more about each bike, I'm coming to really appreciate the light feeling that the Ktm and Husqvarna offer. Also that extra burst of power that Map 2 gave us as well. I was kind of jumping through the bumps, diving into corners, and really being creative with my lines as the track was rough and rutted today. As always, these are just my initial impressions after day one of testing on this bike. We still have a long ways to go, and we've also been seeing and hearing rumors about the new Wi-Fi map tool that KTM is going to be offering. It comes as a cool bar pad tool, and we're excited to test that out as well. So we're going to be putting a lot more hours on this bike. We're going to be racing it, riding it, testing it out on multiple different tracks, and putting it up against our other 2020 450s before we write the full MXA race test, which you can check out in a future issue of Motocross Action magazine. We'll have all the details of my impressions, our vet rider impressions, and more in the magazine. Plus, we're getting even closer to our 2021 MXA 450 shootout, and our shootout technically has already started. We already got 4 bikes in our fleet, 4 bikes in the garage that we're testing already, racing already, and putting a lot of time on. So once we get the Honda and Suzuki, we're going to be putting these bikes together, getting the 450 shootout ready to go. So stay tuned to motocrossactionmag.com for more info on this bike, as well as news, reviews, race results, and more. And also, to stay up to date with the latest Motocross Action videos, you can hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Also, before you go, we just got done testing the 2021 Yamaha YZ450F and the 2021 Husqvarna FC450. So check out those videos now.